Great, and then I will start sharing my screen. So a warm welcome to this webinar, the World Business Webinar Opportunities in Southeast Asia. I am your moderator today. My name is Elin Stenvall, and I am an international coordinator at the Norrbotten Chamber of Commerce. With me today, I have Ida Stjernström, Jacqueline Chen, and Rico Mäkelä from Team Nordic. And Team Nordic consists of Business Sweden, Nordic Innovation House Singapore, and Business Finland. Today, we have more participants in Team Nordic, but you will learn more about that later on. Today's agenda is a market presentation of Southeast Asia by Ida Stjernström, followed by an introduction to Team Nordic by Jacqueline and Rico. And at the very end of this webinar, we will have a Q&A where you can ask questions, but you're of course mostly welcome to ask questions during the presentations if you wish to, or add comments if you wish to as well. To do so, just add your comment in the chat function. I will be monitoring the chat throughout the webinar, so I will raise the questions to the speakers if there are any. Before we start, I kindly ask you to mute your microphone and turning your camera off so that we don't use too much bandwidth of this meeting. And now we would like to ask you a couple of questions to see how much you know of Southeast Asia. So I have prepared a couple of questions for you. And the first one being, let's see if we get this to work. What country are you most interested in expanding to? And you should have received now a pop-up screen where you can reply, but you can also reply in the chat function. Let's see, we have 3 votes, so some of you have seen it. 7 votes. We have Singapore with 57% seems to be the most. No, it's just 43%. It's Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And that are the most popular ones, and Vietnam at the bottom there, and Thailand. Let's move on to the second one.
Ellen, can we see the results?
Yeah, you can go to the chat function, and you can see it over there.
Oh, okay, yes. I understand.
So the next question is, what is the size of the total population in Southeast Asia? Everything is anonymous, so you don't have to feel ashamed or your lack of knowledge like I have. I'm voting myself too. We have 7 votes so far, with the majority saying 650 million people. And yeah, the results to these questions are in the chat function. So let's move on to the next question. Southeast Asia is the largest economy in the world based on GDP. What is it the 5th, the 10th, or the 15th largest economy in the world? And we have 7 votes so far, with a majority saying that it's the 5th. Let's see, hopefully Ida, you will let us know what the answers are to these questions in a short while. And then we have a final question, and that is, what is the annual GDP growth of the Southeast Asian economy? Is it 1.5%, 3.4%, or 5.2%? That's a really tough one, but really interesting. Yeah, we have received 12 votes, with a majority saying 5, or guessing perhaps 5.2%. Yes, thank you for taking part of this quiz. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ida Stjernström from Business Sweden. Welcome, Ida.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Elin, and good morning, everyone in Sweden. Just looking through the answers to the questions that we had, I see here that Singapore come up as one of the most interesting countries for the audience today to invest in. We will actually ask this question after the presentation as well, to see if the result of this question changes. In terms of the other fact-based questions on Southeast Asia, I can see that the knowledge of Southeast Asia among the audience is pretty good. I see most have answered the correct answer to these questions, and I hope you get the purpose of us as asking these questions to tell the story about Southeast Asia and what economy this really is. So I hope to be able to share some depth into that information to you guys today. So let me share my screen. So I'll take over from you, Ellen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it looks perfect.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let me start by just do a very quick introduction to myself as well. My name is Ida Stjernström, and I work as a consultant in Business Sweden's Singapore office. So for the last 4 years, I have been working with helping Swedish companies to grow global sales. And for 3 of those years, I've been based in Singapore, focusing on the Southeast Asia region. Before Singapore, I was based in London, working towards the British market. So my expertise lies within market entry and market expansion. Industry-wise, I am leading currently the consumer product and agri-food tech industry practice in Southeast Asia, but I've also worked quite a lot within the automotive and the healthcare industry, which are 2 industries that we are quite strong on from the Sweden side in terms of what Swedish solutions we have in those industries. But I'm actually from Kiruna, so I grew up in Luleå, and so it's extra special a pleasure for me to be here with you guys this morning. And I actually haven't been home in 2 years, so because of the pandemic. But if everything goes smoothly, I have a flight to Kallax Airport in July, so I'm super excited to come back to see the midnight sun. So if we take a look at the agenda today, I will talk to you firstly about the macroeconomic kind of overview of Southeast Asia, if you view Southeast Asia as a single economy, as a region. But then we will take also a closer look into the economies behind the region and the business opportunities. And then we will kind of zoom in more in detail on the key industry trends and the opportunities that we observe in the region for Swedish companies to come in and deliver solutions to. I will round off my presentation to talk in general, some general recommendations for businesses who are interested in expanding to Southeast Asia. And then finally, just briefly, how Business Sweden can help and how we normally work with Swedish companies in expanding to this region. So I actually want to start my presentation from the ending, and I want to mention 3 key takeaways that I hope you guys will get from this presentation today. So the first one being that this is the growth in this region is one of the highest in the world, and the growth is also stable. So it's very high and it's stable. So that is favorable conditions for doing business. So that's one key message I really want for you guys to take away today. Secondly, because of this rapid and stable growth, Southeast Asia is in massive needs of new innovative solutions. So we will talk about that later in the presentation, but there are a large need for that here, and I know that Swedish companies do have very good innovative solutions that can apply to the needs we see in this region. And lastly, you can still join the race. So if you target the right customers and if you develop your digital capabilities, you can bring innovation into this region and have that as part of your growth strategy as well. So Southeast Asia, if we look at some key facts, it is, if we start with the location of Southeast Asia, so it has a very strategic geographical location. And it is a region that has for centuries been thriving on trade with other regions and countries because of the Strait of Malacca flowing between Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore. It has hundreds of years of being one of the world's busiest trade routes. So if you view Southeast Asia as a single economy, it has a total value of $3 trillion currently, and that makes it actually the world's fifth largest economy, which I don't think many people actually know that it is that size of an economy that we are talking about when we look at Southeast Asia. So as a whole, the region is also expected to grow at an average of 5.2% per year. This is also very rare to find now a region that can grow in that pace. Other places where you would find that those growth rates would be Africa, but then you're facing challenges on another level that you don't really see in Southeast Asia. Population-wise, Southeast Asia is the third largest population, also if you view it as a single economy, after China and India. So it's home to about 668 million people. So it's about 9% of the world's population. And this is definitely one of the distinctive attributes to this region's growth outlooks, of course. In terms of trade, Southeast Asia is a global economic and trading powerhouse. So even though the individual Southeast Asian countries differ in their dependency on international trade, they all share a very similar stated commitment towards greater openness and increased integration. So the region has expanded its relations globally with other regions and other countries through numerous free trade agreements over the past decades, and quite a more in the pipeline to come as well. So as of 2020, we see that about 13.4% of global exports actually come from Southeast Asia, and 11% of global FDI, so foreign direct investment, goes into Southeast Asia. So these are some of the key reasons why many businesses consider Southeast Asia to be among the most interesting regions globally, and a region that cannot be neglected if you want to grow your company international and you want to have an Asia Pacific strategy. Then Southeast Asia is a core region in that, or should be a core region in that growth strategy. So if we then look at the Sweden side, so how has Sweden performed in Southeast Asia? It is, I think we have some room for improvement. So today, Swedish, if we look at Swedish exports, Southeast Asia only constitutes of less than 2% of Swedish exports today. So Swedish companies have been very successful in Asia in recent years, but primarily they have been focusing towards other markets like China and India for obvious reason in terms of growth and opportunities. So I think that has kind of resulted in partly overlooked opportunities in Southeast Asia. So we believe that there are a lot of opportunities for Swedish companies in this region, and we work quite hard in increasing the presence of Swedish exports into this region at Business Sweden.
Sorry for interrupting. We have received a question in the chat. A question of, would you have a GDP statistics per country, or do you only have it for the entire region?
I do actually. We will, in my next slide, we will look into the economies behind this region. And this presentation will be shared with you guys afterwards, so you will have all this data in detail after this call as well. So if we, great question. If we look into the region, who is actually behind the region? So Southeast Asia consists of 11 countries, and the location reaches from eastern India to China, and it's positioned in the center of Asia Pacific. So it's basically located between the Indian Ocean on the west, and then you have the Pacific Ocean on the east. So the South China Sea is kind of the main body of water that separates between the mainland and the insular region. So the region's growth is largely driven by the growth of the middle class population. So by 2030, Southeast Asia is expected to have a middle class population size of 334 million people. So I mean, just think about that. It's roughly the size of the whole of the United States population. So the growth of the region is also largely driven by urbanization, where there is we expect that about 66% of the total population will live in urban areas in 2050. So the region is home to 3 megacities. You have Jakarta, Manila, Bangkok. We will take a look at some of the other big cities, but in terms of what is considered or defined as a megacity, these are the three megacities. So now, if we want to look at the individual countries and their GDP per capita, you can find that on this slide. You can also see the average GDP growth between 2020 and 2025, population size, human development index, and some information about the different culture, religion, and governance. So these are the 10 countries in Southeast Asia that makes up of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So probably many of you have heard about ASEAN, which is an economic union comprising of these 10 member states, and it was established in 1967. So like what the EU is doing in Europe, ASEAN is trying to make similar efforts in this region to increase the integration on different levels, everything from political to economical to social. But it's very important to take note of the significant diversity that we see in the different countries in Southeast Asia. And I think, honestly, I think it would be difficult to imagine 10 countries more different from each other. They're very different, but they do still operate as a very interesting economic region. So, I mean, as you see on the slide here, right, if we compare individual countries in Southeast Asia, just from an income perspective, if you look at GDP per capita, we can group them into 3 categories. So obviously you have the high income, you have medium income, and then you have low income countries. And if you compare then, Singapore, which is the richest country, has a GDP per capita that is over 40 times higher than that one of Myanmar being the lowest. So we're talking about extreme differences between these countries. Also, if you look at the Human Development Index, we see huge discrepancies between the countries. I mean, Singapore is ranking in the top 10 globally, where you have Cambodia on the bottom place of 146. The Human Development Index doesn't just look at income levels, it also looks at health and life expectancy, and it looks at education, schooling, and those more social factors. So this is obviously something that is widespread in the region in terms of the differences and the diversity. So these differences are important to understand when you do business in this region, and it comes down to political systems. Everything, you have countries ranging from autocracies to democracies. In the economic systems range from socialist to capitalist. Religions, languages are vastly different in the regions. So I sit in Singapore, and I work with a lot of Swedish companies that have regional offices in Singapore, and they work in the region, and they view the region as several opportunities for them. But you really need to understand the differences when you go into these different countries to do business. Elin, I can't see the chat, so I'm not sure. Any questions on this, or should I just move on?
No questions so far. I will let you know if we receive any, so you can continue.
Yep. All right. Thanks. So yeah, let's look a little bit closer on the economies behind and the business behind these countries. So if we look at the key characteristics and level of development in the different countries, we find that, I mean, obviously Singapore is the sole advanced economy in Southeast Asia. It has a very attractive consumer base in terms of purchasing power and the wealth of each individual in that country and what they can spend on consumption. Singapore has a very advanced economy, has a very advanced manufacturing industry. It's a flourishing global financial center, where you also have Malaysia and Thailand that scores fairly high on the Human Development Index. They're larger markets in volume, so interesting consumer market. Spending power is of course lower than in Singapore, but you have fairly high consumer power and a volume in terms of number of people. So Malaysia and Thailand are large manufacturing and trading hubs. They're very strong in EE and automobile production. if we look in the middle here in terms of level of development, we have Indonesia and the Philippines, which are the largest markets in terms of population size. I mean, in Indonesia, you have 270 million. In the Philippines, you have 110 million people. So this is really large consumer markets with a young population and growing middle class. And yeah, Indonesia is also a major coal and natural gas exporter, whereas in the Philippines, they're quite large or successful when it comes to more of the business process outsourcing and those kind of industries. And then you have Vietnam, which is the fastest growing market in the region. And I would say that that country has really come up as one of the most important markets for our Swedish companies that we have here in the region for future investments. So that's really coming up as the main beneficiary of the trade war between US and China. So we see a lot of companies moving into Vietnam and choosing Vietnam as a center for sourcing or manufacturing instead of doing that in China because of the trade tensions there with the US. And then in the bottom, you have Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, which is heavily dependent on textile industry or agriculture industry, mining to some extent. Also, just want to mention real quick about Southeast Asia. Another key area for success in Southeast Asia and driver of the growth is venture capital and private equity investment that we have seen over the last years. So there is roughly 7,000 startups in Southeast Asia. Primarily, the location for these startups is Indonesia, Singapore, and Vietnam. But we have seen a number of unicorns emerging in Southeast Asia. So some key names here, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but you have Grab and Gojek, which is the Southeast Asia version of Uber, basically. Traveloka is Southeast Asia's biggest go-to platform for various traveling needs. You have the Tokopedia, Lazada, Bukalapak, which are the largest e-commerce marketplaces. So we do see a lot of venture capital and private equity coming in from Europe, China, North America, investing in startups locally here that are really taking off, and especially in the last decade. So we do estimate that in the coming 5-year period, at least 10 more companies with a market value of more than 1 billion each will come from Southeast Asia. So this is also a very positive growth indication for the future of the region. If we dig into the sector overview more in detail and the key industries that we see for Swedish companies based on the trends here, and I'll talk more about that, but then I also want to raise a little bit around the challenges that we see doing business in this region as well. So mainly we see 4 key trends shaping the economy and the opportunities in Southeast Asia. So first, one of these trends is infrastructure investments. So major infrastructure investments and projects in this sector are being carried out in Southeast Asia. Transport is a very large one here, but also the increased focus on sustainable infrastructure solutions in terms of smart city because of all the urbanization and the mega cities and the large cities that we see developing in the region. We see changing demographics with very fast growing and large middle class in Southeast Asia. So that is resulting in this becoming a more attractive sales region, but it's also challenges when it comes to that. When you look at the aging population that we also have in this region, in some countries more than other, but then also, of course, the challenges with urbanization. We see an emphasis on digital 4.0 or industry 4.0, which has been very prevalent or is very prevalent right now because of the strong, Southeast Asia is a manufacturing hub. So it's a manufacturing hub and a consumer-based market. So there's a very strong need for digital solutions and improved processes. And this also relates to information technology and how consumers actually purchase goods and services, and the and the growth of the e-commerce industry here. So lastly, as I mentioned before, the shift in manufacturing. So manufacturing is a key hub here, or key industry here. So there is a shift here where we see that CI is becoming a more interconnected and attractive hub, and a new location for whereas maybe before India or China would have been a first option. Southeast Asia is now really coming up as a good option basically for companies to relocate to or expand their existing operations here. And this is also, again, coming back to what I said before, largely driven by the US tariffs that is on the Chinese exports and development of that relationships. So in terms of key opportunities in industries that we see for Swedish companies, then exist mainly within infrastructure and smart city, healthcare, ICT and e-commerce, and then we have manufacturing and agriculture or Agri-Food Tech. So we do work a lot within these different industries, supporting Swedish suppliers, Swedish companies that have goods and services and offerings within these different industries, helping them to position themselves in these countries in these industries. So if we dig a little bit deeper in those four different key industries, if we look first at infrastructure and smart city, there is strong demand for better and more sustainable infrastructure. So by 2030, estimated 90 million people are expected to move to urban areas in Southeast Asia, along with 60 million people that are entering the workforce. So I mean, in order to maintain this growth momentum, Southeast Asia will need at least $3 trillion in infrastructure investments through 2030. So we're looking at a very, very strong need of infrastructure investments to build all those cities and all that interconnectivity between the cities and the urban areas and the rural areas. So, I mean, this poses a lot of opportunities and implications to be able to achieve that goal and actually maintain a good infrastructure that supports the growth of those countries. So, of course, that has a lot of implications for the telecom industry. We see very large opportunities in the transport infrastructure, both within these cities, but also between the cities and connecting the urban areas with the rural areas. Power infrastructure to be able to supply a good power structure to these growing cities. And then, yeah, we have smart cities becoming smarter and better in how to build cities, and then water and sanitation. So, I mean, if we look more specifically into smart cities, we can obviously say that, I mean, the future of Southeast Asia is very much tied to how the fate of its cities, or how the cities will be able to capture this urbanization and the economic growth that is happening. But because this has happened pretty fast, the growth of the region, it has left many cities currently struggling when it comes to provide adequate housing and a good infrastructure and services to meet the needs of this population. So, I mean, I would say these 7 areas here are definitely some of the key areas where we see immediate need for new solutions to come in and support these developments. So, I mean, economy just in general, infrastructure that supports the key industries per country. So, depending on what is, I mean, in Indonesia, for example, you have mining is a big industry, whereas in Vietnam, it's more related to manufacturing. Of course, as I mentioned before, mobility, but also social infrastructure and I mean, schools, hospitals, and to have a sustainable environment, quality streets, good streets, and a good way of handling all the congestion and pollution that happens in a big city, and also especially when it comes to waste and water management, and those type of solutions, which Swedish companies are actually very strong in. I think we are in some areas really world leading in these technologies and solutions. So we see a very strong match here between the needs of these cities and the solutions and technologies that Swedish companies actually have. I mean, as well as in security, both. I mean, in Sweden we are very strong on security when it comes to security technology, but also some of the world's largest security companies. So I think these are definitely some of the key areas where we see a strong need for improvement in Southeast Asia. If we look into healthcare also being one of the key industries where we see a good application of Swedish companies and solutions into the region, the global trends that are playing out in Southeast Asia will continue to drive demand for healthcare in the region. So, I mean, healthcare expenditure is predicted to see a significant growth in the region as the region as a whole is facing a lot of increased health costs. So, I mean, expenditure is expected to reach around $700 billion by 2025. And I mean, if you look at the key trends driving this, it's something that you would see, I think, in a lot of other regions, and definitely trends we've been seeing in more advanced economies before, right? But an aging population, and of course, Singapore, this correlates very well to the wealth of the nation. So Singapore is at the top here. So big opportunities for elderly care. We also see trends of lack of exercise and increasing the Western lifestyle. So here we see increasing difficulties when it comes to public health, like diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, and those kind of challenges in the healthcare landscape. The out-of-pocket costs are also fairly high in the region, and there is a limited amount of resources. So when you look into the different countries and in terms of the resources in the healthcare systems, it also varies a lot. So, I mean, if you look at the number of doctors or healthcare specialists per individual in a country or per population size, or if you look into how many hospital beds you have per population size in these countries, they vary quite a lot, and with very limited amount of resources in the large countries like Indonesia and Philippines, as well as Vietnam. So here it's a very important time for this region now to find good solutions that can support with that, because I think digitalization is a key area to be able to supply a lot of people with healthcare on a low number of healthcare professionals. So a lot of the hospitals and the governments here are looking into how can we optimize the healthcare system, both in terms of doing more of home care, so avoiding that everyone has to go into a specific hospital or place to get care. How can they actually get care in their houses through digitalization and actually helping them from distance? Also, of course, we have the very strong growing middle class that are now demanding a better quality care, a more personalized care that they can also now afford. So to be able to meet the future healthcare needs in Southeast Asia, there is a significant amount of capital that is being invested into these digital healthcare technologies. So we see a lot within various apps, AI, e-services, 3D printing, and the digital penetration or the digital maturity in the region is actually very high. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's generally high. So the infrastructure is there to be able to supply these kind of services to the different countries. So another area that is playing an important role here is the startup scene in terms of strengthening the healthcare ecosystem in the region. So not just getting suppliers and providers from abroad, but developing these in the region. So Singapore is obviously the hub for raising capital because it's a financial hub. So if we look at the 50 most funded startups in ASEAN, you can obviously see that most of them are based in Singapore because this is where they tend to raise their capital. But in terms of actually supplying or applying their solutions and their technologies and their product, it's very likely that they will do that in other countries in Southeast Asia. So if we look at the specialization, you can see that some of the key areas that we have seen investment going into in the region is telehealth and telemedicine being the largest one. I think this is also an area that Sweden has been, very big in the last couple of years. We have a lot of companies in that space already. A second area that is quite heavily invested into is medical devices and hardware in general. So this is also a flourishing industry for venture capital and private equity in the last few years, driving the growth in this industry. So, okay, Elin, no questions so far. Otherwise, I'm just.
Yeah, we have received 2 questions, but I didn't want to interrupt you. The first one is regarding tariffs. How is the tariffs for Southeast Asia with EU member countries?
Okay, that's a very good question. It depends. It depends which country you were talking to. So there is, each country will obviously have their own free trade agreements with different countries or different regions, and then ASEAN as a whole will have some. So it would really depend on the special kind of which country you're asking of. So yeah, I'm happy to, if someone has a specific country that they want to know about and a specific product or service that they're looking at, then I'm happy to take that after this call over email, and I can advise specifically on that.
Perfect, thank you. I will send out all of the presentations and contact information to the speakers, to all of the registered participants after this webinar. We also have a second question. What about investments from Southeast Asia area to Nordic countries?
Oh, that's also a really good question. I could not answer. I cannot give you a figure top of my mind. We do have a flow towards that direction as well. And Business Sweden, as some of you might know, we also work with Invest. So we work with Trade, where we help Swedish companies expand abroad, but we also have an Invest side where we help international companies invest into Sweden. So we do work, if I think about Southeast Asia as a region, we do work with that to some degree in Singapore. So it is there is a market for it, but it's not huge. But it's definitely potential going forward as well.
Great, thank you. We also received a question right now. How is the competition between Southeast Asian countries in different sectors?
Can you rephrase the question? How is
the competition between Southeast Asian countries in different sectors?
Okay, that's an interesting question as well. Competition. It really also depends on what's the purpose of the question. Okay, so the first thing that I'm thinking about is the competition in terms of being a location for foreign direct investment, right? So, you would have Malaysia, Vietnam, or Thailand, I guess, in a way competing in terms of being the location for setting up a manufacturing or sourcing investment or facility or operation, right? So, I think each country has its own strength, and when it comes to what they are mostly attracting foreign companies to come and invest in. But I mean, we're seeing now, for example, with Vietnam increasing their capabilities or their ability to take more foreign investments in traditional industries that potentially would have been done in Thailand, for example, but now in Vietnam is trying to get those investments that would have historically gone to Thailand. When it comes to setting up regional presence, then of course Singapore is a top position, and then I would say maybe that Singapore, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and Bangkok, Thailand would be kind of competing around who has the best offer for foreign companies to use their capital city as a regional hub investment from foreign companies to set up their business there to reach the Southeast Asia region as a whole. Jakarta would also potentially be running for that position. I'm not sure if I'm answering if this is exactly what the kind of answer you were looking for in terms of the question, but that's what I think in terms of how they're competing against each other.
Perfect, thank you. It was a really interesting question and a really interesting reply. It's 10:43, so you have 7 more minutes if you would like to continue, please.
Yes. All right. We were on ICT and e-commerce. So in terms of internet usage in Southeast Asia, it has been multiplying in the past year. So just alone last year in 2020, we had 40 million new users on the internet. 40 million, we have 10 million people in Sweden just in 1 year. So as of now, there's roughly 400 million internet users in Southeast Asia. So about 70% of the population is online. So the internet penetration is fairly high in the region. So what I said before, the infrastructure to provide digital solutions that can be used with mobile devices and needs connectivity is high. It's generally strong. If you would compare this region to a similar growth region in, let's say, Southern Africa, you are not going to find that same development of digital infrastructure. So it has good baseline to build applications on it, definitely. So the internet economy in the region is expected now to grow 23% annually over the coming 5 years, and this is primarily driven by the e-commerce sector. And of course, as we see globally, the e-commerce sector has really accelerated even further from COVID-19. A lot of the countries in Southeast Asia took a very hard harsh lockdown approach. So a lot of the countries here closed their borders. A lot of the countries here have imposed lockdowns and movement restrictions and closure of in-dining and retail. So this has, of course, really strengthened the e-commerce sector. And even now, when we see economies opening up, the e-commerce growth is sustaining. So this is definitely an industry that will really boom in the coming five years. Quickly, I just want to mention on manufacturing and agriculture. It is a manufacturing hub. I'm not going to go into all these details. It could be potentially interesting for some of you if you're in this industry to take a look at these numbers when we send over the presentation to you afterwards. But essentially, the message what we want to say here is that some of the key markets in Southeast Asia is really showing up as a more favorable manufacturing place because of the costs. So if you look at the typical costs that would be impact that you would have in a manufacturing facility, such as labor, land, utilities, to port transportation, shipping, where you would have China being a traditionally a good location for this. You can see now that Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia really comes up as more cheaper options to set up these operations and becoming a more favorable locations for companies in terms of from a cost perspective. Finally, on the industry side, I just want to talk a little bit about the agriculture and agri-food tech industry, which I think is a very interesting opportunity here as well. Southeast Asia contributes significantly to the global food supply chain, and it is actually home to 4 of the top 10 fish producers in the world. So Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. So it is an agriculture industry that is very fragmented. So there is around, over 100 million smallholder farmers that is making up that whole industry. So there are some key challenges in the agriculture industry that we see. And if we split it up into 3 key areas, so before farming, the main challenge is within the limited access to capital for those smallholder farmers. If we look at during farming, it is access to good knowledge to be able to yield as much crop as possible. If you look into after farming, it's the access for those smallholder farming to the customer or the marketplace. So when we look at the key trends of new agri-food tech solutions or applications here, we see a lot of peer-to-peer lending, crowdfunding, new ways of getting access for these farmholders. And what's good in this region is because even the rural area farmers still tends to have a mobile phone or a mobile connection. So it's actually it's possible to provide these solutions for the farmers. We also see a big upswing here in precision agriculture, easy ways for farmers to be able to yield better crop and time their agriculture or their farming in a better way because they have better access to predicting the weather or seasons or things like this that is fairly easy to do, but these small farmholders simply does not currently have access to it. And then lastly, also you have the different agriculture marketplaces and more on the kind of e-commerce, but for the farmers to actually access dealers and even customers directly. So that was the last slide that I had on the industry opportunities. A few words on the key challenges. Southeast Asia is full of opportunities, but it also is a region of some challenges that are worth mentioning. One being corruption. It is a lot of reforms to combat corruptions are underway, but this remains a challenge in Southeast Asia in a few markets. Political and governance challenges also exist. There's been tremendous progress when it comes to reducing poverty, but it also remains a challenge in some markets in Southeast Asia. We see red tape, we see difficulties accessing financing, both for SMEs, but also directly for households. And then environment. So Southeast Asia is faced with immense environmental challenges because of the urbanization. So for example, Jakarta, Hanoi are 2 of the world's top 10 most polluted cities in the world. You also have Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, which are among the top 5 countries in the world with the worst mismanaged waste, basically. So that when it comes down to air quality and waste management, this is a key issue in the region. But for Swedish, from a Swedish perspective, this is what we are actually really good at. So I think that there is a way for Sweden to come in this region and help them out with these challenges. So I will spend the last few minutes to just mention a few recommendations from our side when it comes to expanding into Southeast Asia. We mainly talk about 3 considerations when expanding your business into this region. So market entry, market growth, and market optimization. So, first you need to carefully select your market because they differ very much, right? So which market actually makes most sense to the solutions that you're offering, and how do you enter the specific market, because there will likely be different ways you need to enter the different markets. So really understanding that. when it comes to growing, so when you are already present on the market, you need to consider how do you accelerate your growth, and how can your offering be developed to reach the next level, and which customer segments have you potentially not been able to reach. Are there synergies between different countries in Southeast Asia that you can leverage in your total expansion strategies to grow even faster? And also, which are the big bets that you really want to go for? What are the strategic projects in all these growth opportunities that fits best with what you have to offer? And how do you find those opportunities, and how do you position yourself in among those stakeholders and in those big bets? And then lastly, when it comes to optimizing your sales channel, so you say you have found your market to end, you know where you want to enter, and you have found your way to enter there, and you have found a good way to accelerate your sales in all the different customer segments that are present. Sales channels are not static, right? So they disintegrate, they reshape constantly. You have partners, distributor, online channels that must be reassessed constantly and optimized in order for you to also keep yourself updated with digitalization and technology developments, new requirements, new regulations, and new potential partners. So this constant reassessment of your strategy based on how is the market moving is also something that is very important to take into consideration. And I also mentioned specifically here on tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So a good question before. Southeast Asia has so many FTAs. So especially if you have a big supply chain organization and a lot of sourcing and working with different countries when it comes to flow of goods, then really maximizing the usage of those FTAs in a good way for your business can be a very good way to optimize your sales channels and your supply chain in general. So this is something that we normally work with companies to look at these three different areas and supporting them when setting their growth strategy to this region. So very happy to have more conversations with anyone on this call if you would be interested to talk more about any of these specific areas, and how do I select which market, or I'm already present here, but how do I find new segments, or how can I optimize my sales channels? So that was my last slide on expanding into Southeast Asia. Few words about Business Sweden. We are present on 20 markets across the APAC region. We have 6 offices in Southeast Asia with local consultants that can support Swedish companies with their growth strategy here. We are globally 400 consultants, and I think that when it comes to the typical type of work that we do for our clients that I just mentioned before, I mean, we have more than 45 years of experience working with Swedish companies in a number of regions, and specifically in Southeast Asia. I think that, obviously some of the key things that we bring is that we know which markets are growing. We are people on the ground that can follow the trends and see what are the key opportunities that make sense for certain companies. And because of our unique mandate being a partly government-related organization, we can open doors that private organizations normally wouldn't be able to do. And I think in a region like Southeast Asia, that is particularly important, especially in countries like Vietnam or Indonesia, where the government tends to be involved in a lot of the key expansion projects that are happening. It's important to position yourself toward the right stakeholders. So yeah, very happy to take any questions from anyone. Either you have it on this call, or Elin, I think, will provide you all with my email. If you have very concrete questions for your company or interest in the region, please feel free to email me directly, and I'm very happy to help you out with whatever question you have. So I think I will stop there. Am I on time?
Great, thank you. We're a few minutes not ahead after the time schedule, but that's fine. We have some minute at the end of the webinar as well. Thank you for a really interesting presentation. I really enjoyed learning more about Southeast Asia. If you stop sharing your screen, I can just quickly add the last question before giving the floor to Jackie. And I just want to know if all of you who have listened have changed your opinion about which country is the most interesting to expand to, or if it's the same. So let's see. It's the same question as we had earlier. And let's see. I think that Singapore is still the most interesting country. Yeah, it's really interesting. We had 7 replies on Singapore, followed by Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. And I would say that it's the same.
I think Singapore even came higher now, right?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. We have a few questions, but I think that we can save them to the end. And one of the questions was very company specific. So I think that we could maybe, answer that by email. But now, thank you, Ida, and welcome, Jackie.
Yep. Hi. Can you hear me and see my presentations?
Yeah, we hear you, and the presentation looks perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ida. So my name is Jackie. I'm actually the community manager at Nordic Innovation House Singapore. So I'm a local here, and I'm happy to be here today to share about who we are and what we do and how we can support Nordic companies in Singapore and Southeast Asia. So Nordic Innovation House is a community platform accelerating high-quality Nordic tech companies. And with our strong community and network, we connect Nordic companies into the right ecosystem stakeholders. So Nordic Innovation House is actually supported by Nordic Innovation, and we are actually a unique collaboration between the 5 Nordic countries. We share the same mission to building bridges between the Nordics and the Southeast Asia. So Nordic Innovation House actually started in 2014 in Silicon Valley, followed by New York, then Singapore, and then Hong Kong. And the recent addition to the family is actually Tokyo. And we provide global network and framework that is tailored to each ecosystem. So based on your needs and requirements and the market they are looking at, that's how we are there to serve you. By each house is actually managed by a community director as well. So to really understand Singapore, it is actually crucial to understand Singapore's role in Southeast Asia, in the Southeast Asia region. Singapore really is the leading innovation hub and also a springboard for many companies to the Southeast Asia market. Singapore is actually dubbed the gateway to Southeast Asia, which has about 650 million in population. It is the regional hub where most of the MNCs have their regional headquarters and also running their business from Singapore, which also means that a lot of the decision makers and funds and corporations and innovation teams are actually based here in Singapore. So currently, Singapore has about 130 co-innovation labs with serving different verticals, specific verticals. So if you're interested to find out more about the Southeast Asia landscape, you may want to check out the Sea Economy 2020 that was produced by Google, Temasek, and Bain. They provide a good overview about the economy in different verticals and of course the development in the last couple of years in Southeast Asia. So for companies, it's usually exploring a new markets is always a journey. So everything starts from the exploration phase. It is also when we start engaging the Nordic companies when they want to gain more insights about the markets in this region. If that goes well, they will establish their presence in Singapore. And during this phase is where we also can support companies by connecting them to the right ecosystem stakeholders, government agencies, investors, and service providers. So at NIHSG, we do have a list of trusted service providers attending to such as hiring talents, legal matters, incorporation matters. So the last step would be, of course, when the companies start expanding beyond Singapore to the other markets in Southeast Asia. It is also when the collaboration between the Nordic TPOs, a short form for Trade Promotion Offices, becomes more important due to their strong presence in Southeast Asia. I will elaborate more who are the TPOs in my next slide. Of course, the reason to come to Singapore it is also to look at scale and growth, and we have a good platform to support you. So we focus only on tech companies. Many times the conversation by the companies is more about when is the right time to come here. And we try to help companies to know what is the requirement and when they are ready to expand into this region. And most importantly, you already have a commercially proven product or service because you need something to be able to scale here in this region. So to highlight, in NIHSG, we provide general services such as network access, Nordic support, community access, and of course, company visibility. So network access means business advisory and support services, like I mentioned earlier, like our trusted service providers. And then we also have mentorship assignment. We have a list of our industry specific mentors that can help you provide some advice and insights towards these vertical sectors or markets. We also have online and on-site business matchmaking events with industry partners and investors. We also do have an investor in residence as a support. The company is Investigate VC. So in terms of Nordic support, we also provide gate advisory services from our Nordic Trade Promotion Offices, the TPOs in Singapore and Southeast Asia. So in our working team, we have the Embassy of Finland, Business Sweden, Innovation Norway, Business Iceland, and Embassy of Denmark. So the services by each TPOs will be subject to their standard restrictions and limitation. And of course, we also try to provide practical guidelines about the Singaporean business culture. So community access, one of our aims is also to provide community building activities in Singapore physically and virtually. And also act as a resource center by providing information about active challenges, industry events, and programs that are happening in Singapore and, of course, in Southeast Asia. Yep. And lastly, in terms of community visibility, we provide companies the publicity in terms on our social media channels and, of course, our monthly newsletter activities. And also, we want to give priority to Nordic companies during industry and partnership events and webinars. So, one of the good vehicle for Nordic companies seeking new market opportunities in Singapore or Southeast Asia is actually our thematic virtual market entry programs that we have been hosting. We have hosted 3 programs to date. It is under the Water Waste Food team, Nordic Health, and Smart Cities. So last year we completed 2. Early this year in Q1 we completed the Water Waste Food. So through this program, companies basically help them to understand the landscape in each vertical, and of course connecting them with key players in the sectors. So since we have completed the water, waste and food program in April, we are actually currently recruiting Nordic companies for our Nordic Health program, which is happening in September. So our aim is basically to select Nordic medtech and health tech companies and then connect them to Singaporean public and private healthcare partners. So the solutions we are looking at are aging, chronic disease prevention, management and rehabilitation, in the diabetes, cancer, and mental health areas. So the program structure is 2 weeks. So the week 1, we are focusing on Nordic Showcase, means the selected companies will get the opportunity to pitch their solutions to local key partners in the healthcare sector. And then the second week, you will have one-on-one meetings with the local partners and of course a high-profile closing event. So before the actual week program, we will also prep you through 2 preparation webinars and of course coaching sessions by our TPOs. So if you're interested, do check out our info deck, and of course the application deadline is coming soon. It's on the 18th of June. So part of the outreach, marketing outreach towards the Nordics, we are hosting 2 webinars next week. So if you're interested, do join us. So we have one on 9th of June talking about Singapore digital healthcare in the new normal. We will have speaker Mr. Chua Chuyong, the director of the Integrated Health Information System, IHIS for short, to share more about the Singapore healthcare landscape, their master plan and examples of their projects addressing the current pandemic, and of course their future plans. So IHIS is actually one of the technology agency for the public healthcare sector in Singapore. So if you're interested, this presentation deck will be sent to you and you can register for the session. It will be hosted in the afternoon, so it matches with the Nordic timing. The second webinar will be on aging care in Singapore and Southeast Asia. So aging is one of the topics that is covered in Singapore as well due to the increasing aging population. So joining us will be Janice Chia, the founder and managing director of Aging Asia Alliance, where she will share more about the aging challenges and opportunities in Singapore and Southeast Asia. So this is happening on 10th of June on next Thursday. So in November, we are actually hosting another virtual program, but this time it will be on smart and sustainable cities. So the project that we are focusing on is actually the Punggol Digital District and the Tengah Smart District. So Singapore is developing these districts to highlight and emphasize more about smart living, and of course, smart and sustainable buildings and green buildings as well. So for this program, it's also a 2-week program, but the more details will be coming, and we will soon be promoting the details on our social media channels. So do follow us, and if you're interested, you can also drop us an email at sg@nordicinnovationhouse.com. So the program itself actually will also include a 12-month support by NIHSG, and it is actually a paid program. So besides having these programs to help Nordic companies to understand more about the Singapore landscape in the respective verticals or sectors, Singapore has always been growing in terms of their innovation challenges and of course the industry events. So most of the key organizers.
Jackie,
Yes.
sorry for interrupting. You have 1 more
Yes.
minute, and we need to move on to Rico.
Okay. So just to highlight quickly some of the challenges that we have ongoing with some of our partners, and you might want to take note, is the Abu Dhabi in Singapore Smart Cities Open Innovation Challenge, and then tech innovation is also one of the key highlight in Q3 this year. So it's a technology matchmaking platform by IPISG. And then 2 major events in Singapore that will happen later this end of year will be the Sweet Singapore and of course the Singapore FinTech Festival. So this is to highlight the partners that we've been working with in Singapore.
I think we lost you there for a minute. Were you done?
Yeah, it's the end already. Yes, sorry. I think my internet reconnected.
No worries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And both this one and the previous one and the upcoming one, the presentations, will be sent to you afterwards. So please, Rico, the floor is yours for the last 5 minutes of this webinar.
Hey, thank you, Elin. Hey, Elin, can you tell me if you heard Jackie perfectly, or did it break out a few times?
For me, I heard her perfectly just until the very, very end of her presentation.
Yeah. Well, then it was only my connection. We are in the same city, so maybe that's why it didn't work that well here.
Okay, yeah, but if you try sharing your screen, if it doesn't work, I have it, so I can share it for you.
Yeah, I'll see if it works. I cannot show it here, so if you could show it, so that would be helpful. Okay, so yeah, so my name is Riku Mäkelä and I'm the Finnish TPO, like Jackie showed that we like acronyms in Singapore. So everything is described with acronyms between 3 and 5 letters. So Trade Promotion Office of Finland here in Singapore is the Embassy of Finland, and I'm working there. And basically Business Finland, the main body of Finland for supporting Finnish companies abroad and in Finland, they don't have an office in Singapore at the moment. They used to have, and they might have in the future, but I work in their team, although I'm paid by the Embassy of Finland and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So for what Ida described as the region, challenges and opportunities and different aspects of the region, I have pretty much nothing to add there. So Ida was many times using the word Swedish and Sweden. And I would say that pretty much everything applies to Finnish situation, to Norwegian situation, to Danish situation and Icelandic situation if we think about the Nordic countries and the northern parts of the Nordic countries. So that was a really good overview of the situation here. So I just want to add 2 points. One is that Nordic Innovation House, what Jackie didn't describe maybe deep enough, is that all of the Nordic countries who are active in Singapore, and we are all active towards Singapore. So one way that we support Nordic companies here is joint productions. And those programs that Jackie just described, and especially the 2 next programs, one for health tech in September and one for smart cities in November, those are some of the main productions also for each country, including Finland. So I'm doing my best, and Business Finland is doing its best right now to find Finnish companies to participate in both of those programs, because they are great mechanisms for learning about the market and for presenting and showcasing to all the key players in Singapore, and also connecting to the region through Singapore. And one thing I was actually not surprised, but a little bit surprised and especially happy was that when you voted in the beginning and in the end of the presentation by Ida about the countries of interest, Singapore was there on the top, and that has been the fact for the last 10 plus years or even longer. So most of the international companies, they start their reach towards Southeast Asia by establishing their presence or partnerships to Singapore and then coordinating their activities from here. So then, Team Finland network includes all the Finnish public organizations who support Finnish companies in their efforts for international business development, and also for getting investments to Finland and talent to Finland and tourism to Finland and innovation cooperation happening internationally and other aspects of doing things together with other countries and towards other countries and from other countries. And 2 key organizations in Southeast Asia are Business Finland, acronym BF, and then embassies. So here is a map of our embassies and Business Finland offices, and the links there for each office and for each embassy and Business Finland. That gives you a direct link to the website that gives you all the people working in those teams if you want to approach us. And if you want to approach the whole region at one discussion, then for Business Finland side, Pekka Laitinen is a new head of the region sitting in Kuala Lumpur, looking after ASEAN, and for Business Finland, Australia is included in the Southeast Asia region, although it's not part of Asia, but still part of the region. And then my job, in addition to Singapore responsibilities, is also to support our team members in whole region. So you can always contact me if you want to find contacts to any of these countries or towards Singapore. And then of all those opportunities and sectors that Ida described, and also what Jackie mentioned, that are joint Nordic productions, for Finland and Finnish efforts in regional level, I would say that our main interest areas are in healthcare and in smart cities. And under this really wide smart cities topic, the key areas where we are focusing our efforts to, they include digital infrastructure and services, plus smart energy and smart waste solutions. And that's my short summary. So thank you everybody for joining us today. And it was lovely to present to you.
Yes, thank you, Rico. It was very nice hearing about the Finnish perspective as well, and what Business Finland is doing together with the other Nordic countries. And that was it for today. It's 11:16, so we took 1 minute longer than scheduled. I apologize for that, but I hope you found it really helpful. The presentations will be sent out to you, and if you haven't received a answer to your question, I will forward them to our speakers so they can answer the questions by email. Yeah, that was everything from us today. Thank you so much for listening and for your questions, and I wish you a good day to you all. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.